Ladies and gentlemen, do not forget to check me out on my other platforms such as Odyssey, Rumble, and Twitch. Links are in the description. So we have a new form of McCarthyism, it seems. So we got these red flag laws, this new gun legislation passed by Congress and signed by former Vice President Joe Biden. Pretty much the most frightening thing in there is encouragement of red flag laws in the states, meaning if you were to say something, post something, or whatever that someone might think can be construed as violent or unstable, they can present it before a judge, and the judge can say, all right, we're going to take your guns. Now, the problem with that is people are very vindictive. You can look at divorce proceedings. You can look at neighborly disputes. This can be catastrophic. But it's also disarming the populace. That's the problem. It disarms the populace. Imagine a populace that can't defend itself. And it might target certain people of certain beliefs. Do you understand that? I hope you do. And, of course, speaking of guns, the Supreme Court recently did a ruling which threw out the New York gun laws, saying that an officer or somebody in charge can decide whether or not you can have a gun, must know a reason why. Now, I believe wholeheartedly that if this ruling came down just a few more days before, they would argue in Congress to say this new bill is unconstitutional based upon the Supreme Court's rulings. Now, having said that, I believe the current configuration of the Supreme Court, when they convene again, will overturn or nullify that bill, because the language is very similar between that new law and the New York gun law, which sets a precedent for gun laws across the nation in some of these highly restrictive areas. Now, speaking of Supreme Court, of course, Roe v. Wade was overturned. It kicked back the debate of abortion back to the states, saying here it's a states issue and it's a people issue. People must decide whether or not they want to have it in their government. So now it's not completely outlawed, but it is said that if a state wants to ban abortions, they can. And if a state wants to have abortions, they can. So that's the gist of the outcome. That is the facts. Now, here's the thing. There's DAs, there's governors, there's whoever that will go out and say they will not uphold the rulings of the Supreme Court. They will break the law. Yet we're preached to day in, day out, 24/7, that we must obey the law. That's the ruling, right? That's the breaks. That is what it is, so you have to accept it. So now, it is my belief that it's gone far beyond a physical or paper or bureaucratic dispute, and it's a spiritual war. How do I know it's a spiritual war? I know it's a spiritual war because if it was just a legit, here's the decision, it is what it is, let's live with it, or do what you can to change it, there would not be people starting fires at churches. There wouldn't be people starting fires at pregnancy centers, the alternative to abortion clinics. There wouldn't be a defiance from DAs and prosecutors and governors and the like to say we're not going to uphold these Supreme Court decisions. We're not going to uphold the law as it's interpreted. So I truly believe that's a spiritual war. Speaking of spiritual war, they love to bring up Romans 13. And I read Romans 13, and it's right. It's like people in seats of government ordained by God, put there by God, therefore to be obeyed. But what happens when it's illegitimate? What happens when they sort of sway things? Now, the same writer, the Apostle Paul, also wrote in Ephesians 6 that we fight not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers of darkness, against principalities, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Now, some translations say heavenly places, but high places. Well, if you're a minister, if you're ordained by God, if you're put in a seat of government, that is indeed a high place. And there is quite a bit of spiritual wickedness. Yet, here's some interpretations of the law handed down by the Supreme Court that they want to blatantly disobey. So, that's the funny thing, right? But the other thing is what happens when, and it is a spiritual war, especially in the high places and the seats of government. What happens when the foreign influences try to encroach upon a nation where the elected officials, where the magistrates, the governors, the prime ministers, the kings, the queens, whoever, start working in cahoots with foreign interests that are not in the land, that the people would have no say, but the foreign interests saying, well, here's this now, here's that now. It's like, but we didn't vote for that, and well, it doesn't matter because we're taking over. And so, speaking of which, when we look back at the Old Testament, books like Ezekiel and Isaiah, Jeremiah, and all these other books, we see what happens when they start bringing in foreign influences, the foreign gods, and in cahoots with the foreign lands, and Israel gets broken up, and once they bring in other customs that are completely foreign, and don't get me wrong, it's not against certain kinds of multiculturalism, no. It is against, like, an overall overarching culture saying, well, we're going to leave Morocco and we're going into Afghanistan, but we're going to turn Afghanistan into Morocco. No, and it's kind of like the same thing. It's like we're going to leave Mexico, but we're going to turn the United States into Mexico. Or we're going to leave the Sudan, and we're going to turn England into Sudan. That is the problem. That is, and not one of them on paper, whether it's a decree from a king or queen or prime minister or elected officials, and when the citizens don't have a say or whatever form of government, when they take over without the due process, just come in, take over something that isn't yours. It's like if your neighbor came into your house and says, this is now my house, this is now my stuff, this is now my bedroom, this is now my garage, and these are the rules of this house, and you have to obey by them, and if you don't like them, we're going to kick you out, we're going to throw you in jail, whatever it is. That's exactly what it's like. It has to do with property, has to do with land management, and it's being managed pretty poorly. So we see history repeating itself. We have a new form of McCarthyism. We have foreign entities trying to take over a land. And it is a spiritual war. And the end game is world government and world religion. How do I know that? Well, you look at the United Nations body for one. You look at we listen to the UN, we listen to the WHO, we protect certain places that have that we just say UNESCO, and pretty much take away people's freedoms to visit there or set up camp or whatever. We just allow them to just take over, say, this is ours, it's not yours anymore. And so, even back in the 90s, you had Bill Clinton give over Presidio, the Presidio ports to the Chinese Communist Party. You have Bill Clinton handing national parks over to the UN, which could possibly account for some of the disappearances in the national park that have been amped up since the 90s. So again, it's a spiritual war, and we have world government, and I believe so, a one world religion is on the horizon. This sort of thing. No wonder it's a spiritual war, because now you have several Protestant churches that are splitting right now, or they're leaving said denomination. Long established ones. Presbyterians had a split. Right now, the United Methodists are having a split. Right now, there's a lot of churches contemplating leaving the Southern Baptist Convention, or already have. And so it just, it's a mishmash. It's a mishmash. So without this focus on what's going on, when we're distracted and fighting amongst ourselves, and it's easy for someone to come in and take what's not theirs and take what's yours. And so anyways, I'm just, this is my concern. These are my thoughts. This is my insight. Anyways, that's all I have to say about it. God bless you, and keep safe. May God keep you.